Should have had some music going.
If you make me a co-host, I can do that.
On the way over here, I heard the little Sesame Street song, the ba-na-ma-na-ba-ba. So that's, I've got a little earworm now, and that's going on in my head.
At my son's first Zoom meeting for kindergarten in the springtime, I thought that his teacher started playing music for a dance party. So we all started, my son and I, rocking out, and we saw a couple other kids doing it. And I was mortified to find out afterwards that he had actually activated Spotify on our computer, and we were like blaring music over top of her entire class. And yeah, when you don't want the background music.
We're just letting folks in. So we'll continue doing that because we had a lot of folks register. So we want to give them a chance to get situated here. So we're just letting folks in still, so we're going to just start shortly. Wanting to make sure that everyone who registered is managing to get into our webinar. So welcome everybody. There's so many names that I recognize and lots of folks that I don't. Welcome, welcome. We're happy to have you here. Thank you for spending the evening with us. So I'm going to go ahead and get started because we want to get this conversation going. We want to give as much time for it as possible. So just thank you everybody for being here tonight. Welcome. If politics is your favorite thing in the world, welcome. If politics isn't really where you see yourself, welcome. If you are an activist, a campaigner, a caregiver, welcome. If you are tired, angry, joyful, welcome. Please make yourself comfortable and take in this conversation in whatever space works best for you. The Feminist Campaign School is from the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Halkominam speaking people. And we are striving to be in solidarity with Indigenous people all across Turtle Island and from the territories that we're on. My name is Nadine Nakagawa. I'm a city councillor in New Westminster, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Feminist Campaign School. I love flower crowns and bright colored lipstick. I love moss and mushrooms, and I love talking about politics and change making with people from all walks of life, coming from lots of different perspectives. So I'm really happy to be here with you this evening. Over to you, Trudy.
Oh, thanks, Nadine. Welcome, everyone. We're so happy that you're all here with us. We're so grateful for our panelists to join us tonight. We know you're all really busy in the work that you do, and it's so important that you've taken the time to come and talk to other folks and help them understand the work that you've done to get where you are and the work that you are doing right now. My name is Trudy Goals. I am the other co-founder of the Feminist Campaign School, and I am super excited to have all of you here tonight. We have currently 124 participants on this call right now, and we are streaming live to YouTube. So hi folks out on YouTube land too. Before we start, we have a really big announcement actually. So we thought that we would be, chomping to get more applications in the door, and we've had an overwhelming response to this program. And it's been so exciting for us. And so yesterday and the day before, we accepted our first round of applicants into the program for January. And we are now accepting applications for another round of this program in April. So we are super excited that we are on track to help get so many more people elected to our municipal offices where they belong and to do amazing work. And we are so grateful for all of you for participating in this. Nadine, would you like to introduce our moderator for the evening?
I would love to. So to know Sheila is to love her. If you know Sheila, you'll know what I'm talking about. She's one of the warmest people that I know. If you don't yet know Sheila, you are welcome for being introduced to her tonight. Her bio is available on our Eventbrite. But what I want to tell you about Sheila is that truly she is an amazing cook. She is somebody who brings an amazing social justice lens to all of her work. And she just has one of the warmest personalities I've ever met. So very, very honored for Sheila to be our facilitator tonight and holding space for us. So over to you, Sheila.
Thank you so much, Trudy and Nadine. I'm so sorry, I almost cried from that introduction. I was not prepared for that. So thank you, everybody. And thank you, everybody at home, for joining us. Good evening to you. And thank you to our panelists again for being here. My name is Sheila Avisa, joining you from the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples, also known as Vancouver, BC. In the daytime, I work as a community health social worker here in Vancouver. I'm also a graduate student in social work and social policy. But tonight, I am so honored to be your moderator for the conversation that we're about to have with 4 amazing women in politics that make up our panelists. And I think both Trudy and Nadine have said it, we want to get you excited about politics and maybe a different kind of politics. One that is rooted in values of justice and equity. And to do that, we want to talk about a range of topics, from the panelists' personal experiences in politics to exploring their reflections on power and influence. Very, very deep conversations. Our powerhouse panelists tonight are Tony Boot, Gurveen Dhaliwal, Lanny Gibson, and Jennifer Reddy. Welcome, everyone. Thank you again for joining us here. And just a quick note, for those of you tuning in from home, we won't have a Q&A section today, but I'd like to invite you to go to the chat box function on Zoom and introduce your name, where you're tuning in from, and what brought you here tonight. I see that some folks, actually a lot of folks are already doing that, so thank you so much for doing that beforehand. If you haven't already done so, please do contribute, share your name, again, your name, where you're tuning in from, and what brought you here tonight. It's always great to get to know who's with us here, even though we can't see you right now. And another note is we have closed captioning tonight. So if you need any subtitles, you can select more, the sign with 3 dots on Zoom there, and you can click view subtitles. And if you'd like to see more than 2 or 3 lines in your subtitles, you can click more again and click view full transcript. Now, our really awesome tech person, Ash, is available to help you in the chat box function. And Ash is under the Feminist Campaign School. So again, if you need any tech help, feel free to reach out to Ash with the name, the Feminist Campaign School, in the chat box. Thank you so much. And thank you for everyone who's already introducing themselves. All right. How about we start with a little bit of introduction to our panelists? I know that we're still waiting for Jennifer Reddy. She is a little bit late tonight. I think she has a meeting just finishing up. So if we don't mind introducing yourself, your name, your position, your pronouns, the Indigenous territory that you're on, and something that brings you joy lately, because God knows we need that now more than ever. So, okay, so your name, position, your pronouns, the Indigenous territory that you're on, and something that brings you joy lately. How about we start from Gurveet?
Hi, everyone. I'm Gurveen Dollywall. I'm a school board trustee here in New Westminster, and I'm currently the school board chair. I live on Kwantlen and Kakite Musqueam territory over in the Queensborough area of New Westminster. Something that brings me joy, I guess. I mean, there's really only one thing. That's my baby boy, Roy. That's a dog, but he's, yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gurveen. I want to see your baby boy, Roy, one of these days.
I know, I was going to pick him up actually, but.
Listen, you're more than welcome to do so. So please, anytime. How about Tony?
Hi, my name is Tony Boot. I'm the mayor of the District of Summerland in the Okanagan, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I am very honored and humbled and blessed to live on the unceded and traditional territory of the Syilx people, the Okanagan people. And one thing that I loved, well, maybe not this time of year, although it's pretty mild up here in the Okanagan right now, I love to get out in the dirt. I'm a huge gardener. The other thing I like to do, and of course I'm not doing that right now either, is I love to get out and ride my motorbike. I find it very freeing.
Tony, that is very cool. I didn't tell you this, but it was my first time ever in Summerland this summer. And wow, what a beautiful, beautiful land. I can only imagine you, cycling around there. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. And how about me?
Hi, thank you. So I'm Lanny Gibson. I'm a city councillor in the district of Kitimat, which is on the unceded territory of the Haisla and Hanaksila people. I use the pronouns she and her. And what brings me the most joy is being out in the old growth forest and near the river surrounding my home, and also being with my family.
Thank you so much, Lanny. And I think the panelists and myself had the privilege of meeting your family for a little bit there before we started. So that's really lovely. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Okay, folks. And again, I think we've all said it. It's such an honor to share space with each other tonight. I'm a little bit sad that it has to be over Zoom, but I'd like to invite you to imagine that we're actually gathered in someone's living room right now. We just had a lovely dinner together, maybe, and we're now just having chat over tea and dessert. Okay, if that makes sense. We'll try our best to make this a supportive and comfortable Zoom environment. So, okay, let's start with our first question. And this question is for everyone on the panel tonight. Could you tell us about the moment or moments in your life that served as a catalyst for you to run for office? And what were the thoughts and feelings that came up for you back then? Let's start with Tony.
Sure. I think for me, I had been approached a number of times, but for me, the council of the day was had introduced to the municipality, and it was not, it wasn't a favorable thing to swap some very fertile prime agricultural land out of an area and for housing to build over 1,000 homes, and to swap in some less fertile land that incidentally had been taken out of the landfill sorry, out of the ALR some years earlier. And agriculture is it's one of our, well, I would say it is very historical here, and really was the start of our economy here. And it continues to be a very important piece of our economy. There are a lot of farmers in the area. most of our land actually is agricultural zoned or in the ALR. And so that was a real affront. And I thought, I need to step up and do something about this.
And can I ask you, Tony, because that sounds like a really pivotal moment. What were the thoughts and feelings that came up for you?
Well, like I said, I felt it was an affront. I felt insulted almost. I grew up in Summerland, and I thought that it was, I know this sounds harsh, but I thought it was dishonorable to the people of, including myself, but to the people of Summerland, especially the people that, started the orchards here, never mind the fact that this is on Indigenous unceded territory. But aside from that, it was a real, I thought it was a real dishonorable way to use the land in order to, put in a huge development. And so I wouldn't say I was angry, but it certainly started a spark with me, and it just grew. My passion about the whole situation grew to the point where, I thought I wanted to step up and see if I could make a difference. And that was in 2014, and I won a seat on council.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing, Tony. And I could just, even as you're talking, I could feel the passion, that force that comes with a mixture of passion, like what you said, maybe not anger, but just that striving for justice, that drive, that's very important. So I really appreciate that. Thank you for sharing. How about Gurveen?
Sure. So for me, I think I had always been interested in social issues and politics, and that was always a part of my academia as well as some of my volunteering. But I just never ever saw myself a part of it. But that is until 2017 when Nadine Nakagawa actually she asked me out for this romantic Greek dinner date, and just straight up asked me if I would run for school board. And at the time, being 26 and brown, I had never seen anyone like me in like an elected role, and that just felt so out of reach. And it was really overwhelming to think if that was even a possibility for me. But it was largely, I figured if Nadine believes in me, maybe I can convince New West too, and hey, maybe I can convince myself to as well. So that was a really pivotal moment for me, and I think it also really taught me a lot about how we need to support women and the work that we need to do to just also ask people and encourage them and support them and understand the voices that we need to local government.
That's so amazing. Thank you, Gurveen. And may I say that I can imagine that you are now that person too. You are, maybe you are right now inspiring a lot of people to run with that. And how about you?
Sorry, I think you may have called on me, but it cut out.
Yes, sorry. And I think I just called on you. And if you could tell us about the moment or moments in your life that served as that catalyst for you.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I always had an interest in politics. I recall as a young child, wanting to be the prime minister. I was raised by a feminist, so that didn't seem like an unusual thing to aspire to at all, which I'm very grateful for. And then, I studied political science and law in university, and it kind of always had an interest in higher levels of office, but I, wasn't really sure if I was going to pursue it. An early moment that comes to mind was about maybe 18 years ago. I went to a lecture by John Ralston Saul, and he talked about public service being something that people don't want to do generally, like the right people don't always want to do it, but that it is a duty. And that always stuck in my mind that, like this is a democracy and we all do have this duty to be engaged. So in terms of local government, though, I think what really opened my eyes up was in 2017, I was invited, just because of my volunteer work in the community around environmental issues, I was invited to be part of a discussion around a community energy and emission plan. And we had the Community Energy Association as facilitators. And I had no idea that local governments have so much control over, or so much influence in either a good or a bad way around the emissions of a community. So I had never really thought about that, things like the energy efficiency of a building or land use planning or transportation. And I believe that that something like 50% of all emissions in Canada are actually within the control of like local government areas that they have jurisdiction over. So that kind of planted a bit of a seed, but I still wasn't really thinking of running. But at the same time that I did that work, I was on a zero waste committee, and it was interesting because the committees were on different topics, but the facilitators had the same recommendation that we really needed to get organics out of our landfill, that it made the most sense from a diversion point of view, from an emissions point of view. And to me, it was just so obvious that I spent the next year calling my elected leaders and calling staff members, and everybody was agreeing that was important and saying that we needed to do it, but nothing at all was changing. And then in the summer of 2018, I still wasn't considering it at all. I thought, I should just continue my work with nonprofits and, work on the lobbying for issues that are of importance to me. But we had a major historical drought here. So this is a rainforest, and it literally didn't rain in the summer of 2019. Like it was the driest year on record. And at the same time, so the moment for me deciding to run was I turned on the radio, and it was discussion of like heat waves killing people in Quebec, crop failures in Korea. And I just thought, okay, I guess I have to do this, because clearly if nothing's happened on a simple issue like getting organics out of the landfill, obviously I need a seat at that table, and I can't just work from the outside. So for me, it was very spur of the moment, only a couple months before the election, but something that I didn't really want to do, but I felt, that I had to do. So.
Thank you so much for that, Lonnie. And actually, my next question is kind of connected to what you just said there. And it's about how each of you decide what level of government to run for. Because I think this is a very big question that a lot of people have in their minds. Maybe I'll start with Gervine. How did you decide what level of government to run for? And how did you know that this level of government was the right place for you?
I think you really don't know until you're there. Now that I think it really is the right place for me. I really do believe that schools are the heart of our communities, and there's such a formative space in all of our lives, and the work that we need to do to support our students is something that's really passionate for me. I grew up in New Westminster, and I went through the school district that I'm now the chair of, and just realizing all of the work that I wanted to do for the little Gervines and all of, the families and the support and the work that families need. And I think a lot of the social issues that we encounter later in life are all things that, had we productively addressed them earlier on, had we supported families and students when they needed it during those formative years, we could really, the social trajectory of, the issues that we're facing now could be a lot different. And I'm just so passionate about it. There's just so much that can be done. And I'm so thankful for working with such an amazing school district and amazing staff, and as well as a really supportive board. And we're all, so it's the right place for me. I'm really passionate about it.
Again, I can feel that passion from you, Gervine, and my little social work heart is just fluttering, because basically what you're saying is preventative work, right? Caring for each other from the beginning, caring for little Gervines and little Sheilas and little Tonys and little Lonnies, right? And that's so important. Thank you so much for that. And how about you, Tony? How did you decide what level of government to run for?
Well, I very much agree with what Gervine just said. You don't really know what you don't know sometimes. And for me, it was local government. I had to start somewhere, and I wanted to, and as you've already heard, why, what was the driver for me getting into politics. And that was at the local government level. Now, it had already, that application, there were two of them, in and out of the agricultural land, had already gone onto the ALR. So there was some urgency there. So right away, the provincial government, or at least Ministry of Agriculture, say, with ALR, was involved. But the only way to reverse this was to win a seat on council. And thankfully, out of the 7 of us, 6 of us were determined that we were going to withdraw the applications from the ALR. So it was kind of an obvious thing for me, but that was kind of the first inkling that I got, really, that you had the power, I guess, the authority to be a change maker. And that really excited me because there are a lot of things that have been done the same way for a long time. And I think that what Lanny spoke to in terms of GHG emissions and how we view our changing climate, those kinds of things, we're at a point with some things that it's now or never, and we need to take advantage of the momentum that's building. And it's not just on climate change, but yeah, it was kind of an obvious choice for me, and I'm really glad I've made it. I did run in the last provincial election, so I love being in politics. And I know that sounds a little crazy because it's not always a lot of fun. It's not always a lovable position, but still, overall, I really, really enjoy it.
Thank you, Tony, and not at all. Again, I can sense the love and passion from you and from everyone in this panel. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And Lonnie, how about you? I know you touched on it a little bit, but how did you decide, and how did you know that it's the right level?
So, for me, it was really a spur of the moment decision. And I guess, with it being a local government election, I felt that I could do it. I had discussions with some parties regarding running at other levels of government, and people had, made that suggestion. But frankly, like, I have a 6-year-old, I cannot fathom how, like, I can hardly do a job at local level. I've had to actually take a leave of absence from my profession to be able to just be a counselor of a small town, and a mom, with all of the work that I do in my home. So yeah, I would love to, seek election in a provincial or federal election, but it seems totally out of reach with a young child, and also really with living a sustainable lifestyle. So I grow a lot of my own food in the summer. I ride my bike. I hang my clothes to dry. I chop wood. I've said to several people, when Elizabeth May was in power, I really want to talk to her about changing the constitution to job share, a seat as an MP, because I don't see, unless you have like a full-time spouse running your household. I mean, I'm sure there's women and people that do it, but and maybe it's just because living in a small town, I can't buy good food anywhere. Like we have to cook our own food every day. But yeah, I think about just maintaining wellness and what I need in terms of like nutrition and exercise. And I don't see, I hope one day that maybe that'll be attainable for me, and that I can get the support of my community to do something like that. But to put in those kinds of hours, it just seems really hard. So kudos to everybody who does it.
Thank you so much for that, Lenny. And I think what I'm hearing from you, and also from everyone here, sometimes it's not an easy thing to decide, this is it. I know for sure it's going to be municipal. There's a lot of factors that come in to considering running for politics to begin with, but also what level of government you want to serve on. You need to kind of listen to what's out there. You also need to consider, your family, or what's out there in the community and the issues that you care about. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for sharing. And this next question is quite connected to the question, the first one. So it's about issues. there's so many issues that are important today. How did each of you decide what issues to highlight when you were running for office, and how do you prioritize? And this question is for all of you. I'll start with Tony.
Well, when I first ran for office in 2014 as a counselor, I, I've always been fairly engaged in the community. I went away, came back. When I left, I said I'd never coming back to this stinking little town. There's nothing here for me. But once you have children, it makes a difference. So came back here and it continued to be an active volunteer and just was as involved in the community as I could be. And of course, when you have children that are going to school, that it makes it quite a bit easier to do that and to meet new people and all of that. As far as deciding what my priorities were going to be, well, you've already heard of one, and that's the agriculture. That was very much, I think everyone in Summerland understood what it was called, the land swap, but understood what that was. What I did is I just kind of did my homework and read lots of newspaper articles, and I have a background in communication, so I like doing that kind of thing anyways. It comes naturally to me. Did lots of reading and lots of talking, and then I decided which of all of these topics am I most passionate about, and then I chose 3, and those are the 3. Of course, I can't remember what one of them was. Silly me. That was 6 years ago, so maybe it's not silly. And then those are the ones that I focused on, and that's how I prioritized what I felt was most important, and that's what I built my campaign around.
Thank you, Tony. And I was just writing what your points there about doing your homework around the issues that are important for your community, and then also matching that with your passion. And I'm just curious, as a follow-up question, do you also consider whether these issues are also politically winnable before deciding that you're going to focus on these issues? Or
well, to be perfectly frank, and I think that's you need to be perfectly frank. No, I didn't give any consideration whatsoever to that. I am not embarrassed to admit that I really didn't have any idea how local government worked. I mean, I knew who the mayor was. I knew who the councillors were. I had attended, council meetings. I've even had made a proposal, a fairly big proposal, to the mayor at that time. It was a woman as well, so kudos to Janice. As well. But the workings of government, and I really had no idea. I mean, I knew that there were bylaws and that kind of thing. I didn't understand the interaction between local government and the regional district, or local government and the municipal government, or sorry, the provincial government, or even the federal government. I didn't understand about what's UBCM, what's FCM, what's a local government association. Didn't understand any of that, but I am a lifelong learner, and that was absolutely right up my alley. I sold my business, and well, there was a bit of an overlap, but I sold my business and went into politics, went on to the next part of my life. And it was like going back to school. It was like taking a university course about something I knew nothing about.
I was going to add, as you're doing it as well, it's always a learning process. And I just want to say, I mean, the political system is so complex. And I mean, I did not go to school in Canada. And when I first came here as an immigrant, oh my gosh, it is very complex. And it took me years to even understand an inch of it. So really kudos to you for learning it. Sounds like it's such a short time. So that's amazing, Tony. How about you, Lonnie?
Thanks. So I think the question was, how did I decide which issues to highlight?
Yeah, and whether you consider whether it's a winnable
Right.
topic or not first. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I had to laugh when Tony, gave her like, no, like I really don't think about, for me, it's about speaking my truth and not really thinking about whether I'm going to win or not, but it just needs to be said. In terms of actually like deciding on the issues that mattered, as I said before, it was a very spur of the minute. I think it was like in August and the election was in October. And I had decided to have a zero waste campaign with just like one sign that, I painted in my garage. So I wanted to have a strong social media presence. So I had worked on a Facebook page, and the night before I was ready to launch it, I thought, okay, I've got to sit down and I've got to put everything swirling around in my head on paper. And I just focused on, I'm born and raised in this community. I also had to laugh, Tony, like age 17, I went straight to Paris, France, get me the hell out of this small town. I'm never coming back, and traveled the world and studied in different cities. And then, yeah, late 20s, you realize, the beauty of a small town and the simplicity of life. And
Same story here.
Yeah.
17 and then late 20s.
Yeah. So, so I really know my community. I had a long history of volunteering and, had been to council meetings, knew some of the issues, and also knew like really that a lot of my needs that were being unmet, like were a very kind of like the prevailing culture, or the sense of the prevailing culture, is very industrial and masculine. And, Kitimat was founded for what was at the time the largest private investment in the country when the hydroelectric dam and the aluminum smelter were built. And now 70 years later, we have this LNG Canada project here, which is again, for its time, the largest private investment. So a lot of my needs around arts and culture and just like an environmental ethic, I knew that they were unmet. And I knew from my social connections, starting, for example, trying to start a toy library when my son was 2, and getting together with all these other moms. And we never got the toy library off the ground, because what would happen was we had about 6 months of meetings where for 2 or 3 hours, we would just talk about what we wanted in our community that was different. Like, why isn't there a cafe with good food where we can take our young children? And so that night before I was launching my Facebook page, I just kind of wrote it all down and had my 10 areas of priority that I felt were a priority, not just to me, but feedback that I'd heard from, people that in my circles. So I will say, though, on the politically winnable, I have been criticized quite forcefully, like to the point of being told in an open meeting by another member of my council that I would never have been elected if I had been more honest. I've been criticized for not being really anti the LNG project during the campaign. And the thing is, I don't believe that the project in my community is a good choice for humanity. I think that we need to be getting off fossil fuels and not building more fossil fuel infrastructure. But if I was in my 20s, I would be out there protesting something. But in my 40s, I really want to focus not on the negative side of being an environmentalist, but on showing what an alternative can be. So, can we get a food forest on some municipal land? Like, what are the alternatives? So for me, I was prepared to answer the question honestly if it came up during the all candidates. It didn't come up, and I didn't want to be painted that way. And my whole agenda was, if this project is going to happen, and it is outside of my control, and it likely is going to happen, I'm just going to work really hard to maximize the benefits for our community, to make sure promises around local employment and training for Indigenous people and environmental commitments. I'm going to work as hard as I can to have respectful, collaborative relationships with industry and to maximize that for the community, while I'm also working on these other projects like getting organics out of the landfill and getting an active transportation network and all of that. So I guess I did, I wasn't prepared to be dishonest. Like I was prepared to kind of give the answer that I just gave to you now. But I did, I wasn't going to kind of try to rally support by saying how horrible of an idea this project was. So but I think, in my mind, I feel as though my success and the success of a lot of other progressive politicians, it really comes from your integrity and from the fact that you're willing to speak your truth even when it's unpopular. So I think you can choose like to how much you emphasize or don't emphasize things, but I think if you're not honest, you're not going to succeed. So
Yeah, and I wrote in bold letters on my notebook, speaking your truth, Lania, very, very important. Thank you. How about you, Gurveen?
Well, when it comes to issues to highlight and bringing priorities, the first step is really for me was bringing issues that, my priorities that reflect my personal values and my passions. Because I think after all, during an election period, you're really trying to sell yourself and you're trying to sell your perspective and why it's needed at the table. And having said that, it's important that you also know your community and you know the issues facing your community, and you also back it up with research as well. And school board's a little bit different, I would say, than any other forms of government, just in that families are so passionate about their kids. They want the best for their kids. They want people that are forward thinking. They're a different kind of voters and they're a different kind of community members. And so there's a different way to approach them. And I think when it comes to winnable issues, for me personally, when I was running, again, I was 27 at the time and just hadn't seen anybody like me before run. And you really do have to strategize. What is the hill that you're willing to die on? And I think being strategic with the issues that you're bringing forward, I care about a lot of things, but what are my top three? And what are the ones that I want to bring forward that at the end of my term can be the things that I care about? Like you can care about a lot of things again, but it's really important to also stay focused as well. And I think, I think that was something that really helped me succeed and, support me in the role after I got elected as well.
Thank you, Gurveen. And I'm sensing a lot of similar themes from what's everyone's saying here. Speaking your truth, being authentic with yourself, getting to know your community, listening to your community, but also doing your research, doing your homework, and strategize. Balancing it with a little bit of strategy as well. And I think these are really important messages that people need to know. Thank you. And my next set of questions is somewhat related to this one, and it's about personal presentation. So the work of being in public office is notoriously difficult for people facing different forms of marginalization, sexism, poverty, racism, ableism, and a lot of times folks are underrepresented in public office. There are also certain expectation for example, women or racialized folks or queer people to behave a certain way or dress a certain way. I just remember, for example, hearing women who wanted to run for office being advised by someone more senior to dress a certain way or speak a certain way or firm up your handshake. These are things that probably you have heard as well from different folks, right? I'm just curious, I'll ask Tony first, how and when do you use these kinds of expectations or advice to protect yourself? And when do you challenge them?
We'll start with the professional dress. I'm as comfortable in jeans as probably anybody ever was in the world, but I like to dress professionally. So when I come to the office, it helps set my space. And I think there's an expectation that the mayor will dress professionally. I think that there's an expectation that councillors will dress professionally when they're doing the business of at a council meeting, at a business meeting. That's our council meetings or business meetings. I think that's an expectation. I do remember, I still consider her my mentor. She's passed on now. And this was my first role in communications, my first job, I guess, in communications. And she said, it's very important to always dress professionally. And she went on a step further and she said, you should never wear pants to work. And I took that as kind of great information, and I never did. And then this was in Vancouver. When I moved back to the Okanagan and I accepted a writing position in Kelowna, it was a technical writing position for a software development company. And it wasn't long before people said, why are you always so dressed up? Well, because this is my work and I feel most comfortable wearing like business wear to work. Now, we had one day a week, usually Friday, where it was jeans day or whatever. And I certainly participated in that, but still. So I that's my personal opinion. It hasn't, it kind of came from my mentor, Barb, but I'm not uncomfortable in professional wear, and I think that it helps get me into my right space when I'm in the office. So that's one thing, or out in the public, because I'm out in the public a lot, although not so much right now with COVID. So that firm handshake, learned that from my parents. Yeah. So, and I like receiving a firm handshake too. I don't know if that's, I think that's just from my upbringing. I like to receive a firm handshake. As far as something that I don't ascribe to, that I've heard a number of times, is, to really do well in a position of leadership, you need to, hi Jennifer, you need to make sure that you're staying in the right mix of people, the movers and shakers in your community and that kind of stuff. And that isn't me. I'm not one to pander to any group or any particular interest, because we all have interests. And I think that the sooner we recognize that you're never going to please everyone all the time. In politics, you're never going to please everyone anytime. That you need to work towards making the best decision for the most number of people in your community. And sometimes that decision, and of course it's a full council decision, but that decision is not always a likable one by, well, there's always somebody or some group or a number of people in the community that said, no, you made the wrong decision. I don't like your decision. Okay, but this is our obligation and our responsibility to the community to make the best decisions we can for the most number of people in the community.
Thank you so much for that, Tony. And I just want to really quickly welcome Jennifer Reddy to our panelists tonight. Hi, Jennifer, can you hear us okay? Yeah. Excellent. Jennifer, maybe we'll take a pause from my line of questioning for a little bit. And if you don't mind introducing yourself, Jennifer, to our audience at home, and say a little bit about your position, your personal pronouns, the Indigenous territory that you're living on, and something that brings you joy.
Well, thanks for the warm welcome, Sheila. And it was nice to come in on Tony's answer there on dress. Very interesting. And yeah, my apologies for being late. And I do want to offer up that I'm happy to connect with folks after this as well, and hope that we can stay connected. Certainly this work is not a one-person job, as you know. So my name's Jennifer Reddy. My pronouns are she and her. And I'm a first-time trustee in Vancouver with the school board. My background is mostly in social policy, education, governance, and curriculum design. So I've been a long time supporter of education, but especially the possibility for education to be transformative. And I'm joining you today from the land of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh, and I grew up on unceded Ktunaxa territory in the East Kootenays. yeah, I'm thinking a lot about how to activate my role in a elected position to be able to fulfill the kinds of requirements required for better outcomes for young people than what we might imagine. And I think a lot of the dialogue is shifting right now around shifting from intention to impact. And I think that's a really good thing. So we have one of the lowest Indigenous graduation rates in the province. And there's a reason for that. There's a lot of systemic design that goes into outcomes like this that are concerning and require specific reasons to be addressed. So I guess your other question was like, what brings me joy? This, absolutely. I wish so much that you existed, anytime before now. But I'm also glad that you're here now. I love skiing. I love speed and taking jumps. And that's where I get a lot of my adrenaline from. I'm looking forward to hearing you all and then rewinding back and listening later.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Jennifer. And thank you again, Tony, for sharing that. And sorry, we have to do a little bit of a... and actually, Jennifer, if you don't mind, I'd love to ask you the same question that I asked Tony, just to get that conversation going, because it's such an important conversation. I don't know if you heard me before, Jennifer, but I was saying about how, sometimes folks are told there are certain expectations for, say, women or racialized folks or queer folks to behave and dress a certain way when they're about to run for office and when they're in public office. How and when do you use these expectations or advice to protect yourself, and when do you challenge them?
Oof, that's a good question. I guess like something I wish I knew going in was that for me, it doesn't seem to matter like how Western or appropriately I dress, or how well I can code switch. Nothing solves sexism. They're not solutions for sexism, for ageism, for racism, for expectations on family status. So when running for school board, I was asked so many times if I have kids or not, if I'm old enough to run. Like, I'm old now. So like, when am I old enough? And how will a young person ever feel empowered to run for a public school board if that's the kind of narrative they're met with? I've been asked if I'm Canadian, and someone wouldn't sign my nomination papers because they didn't believe if I was Canadian or not. So I feel like, especially growing up in the East Kootenays and how often I am challenged to sort of fit in and how often I'm reminded that I don't, it really, it's not a hill I'm willing to die on. So I just try to wear things that make me feel comfortable. And that's the main thing. So yeah, and working from home right now, there's a lot more forgiveness in that. And sometimes I don't have to turn on my camera, which allows me to process, because a lot of the decision-making processes are so emotional. They're heavy. I get dismissed at the public board table all the time. My emotions are deleted. And I can't really keep a straight face when that's happening. So being able to turn my camera off and going is awesome and just helps me cope a little bit better. But all that to say that it definitely isn't just me. Like, I have a whole team that backs me up, that comes to meetings, that supports the work moving forward, and kind of helps me focus on the content. And that's where I'm at. But yeah, I know that's not where everyone's at. So hopefully it's just an offering.
Thank you so much for that, Jennifer. And Gurveen, this next question is for you, and it's actually quite related to the previous question. How do you bring your full self to your work?
I just everything Jennifer said, though, it really resonated, especially like all of the things, especially when you're running for election, all the things that they ask, all of these ways that you have to prove yourself worthy of like the position that you're trying to get into. How do I bring my full self to my work? I think it's a constant process, I would say. I don't think you're just immediately there. I think it depends on the time, the place, and the space, the conversations you're having as well. And I think growing comfortable, the more you feel comfortable in your leadership, the more confident you develop into the things that you're bringing to the table as well, and more believing in yourself, it becomes a lot easier to bring your full self to work. And I know for me, I don't know, it depends again on the situation. And for me, I say like a lot, and I think that's something that's a part of bringing my full self to my work, that, you know, you can still be a trustee and just not talk perhaps the conventional ways. And one thing that I'm also really mindful of is when I do visit schools is to make sure that I am bringing my total full self to those spaces, that I'm not following those patriarchal standards of wearing suits or fancy outfits, that students can see just a regular person walking in, somebody that they can see themselves as being, and just making sure I'm being mindful of the spaces that I'm being in. Am I inspiring people, or am I continuing the same standards that are really not moving us forward?
Thank you so much for that, Gurveen. And really what I'm hearing from everyone, actually from the beginning, is just the importance of being authentic to yourself, despite it all. And obviously considering also the challenges, the systemic challenges. Sexism is still there, racism is still there, but despite it all, how do we stay true to ourselves? What do we feel comfortable in? And oh yes, Jennifer, I see you. Please unmute yourself.
Sheila, if it's okay, you just reminded me of something, and Gurveen did too. Okay, so one other thing is also, I would just wanted to spend just a 1 second on tokenization. And when you are the only racialized person running or elected, or even if you're one of a few, you're also not fitting into your community standards. And I don't know if that's the same for everyone else, but it's having short hair might be cool for Western Canadian standards, but it's not cool for my cultural standards. So it's also I will never be able to do it all unless I have a series of wigs and different types of, it's just not going to work. So I think this is part of the challenge. I just wanted to mention that.
I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you. As someone who used to have shaved sides and being seen as a weirdo everywhere, but also don't fit anywhere, I hear you. And this same problem exists in so many other fields of work as well, right? So I really appreciate that. Thanks, Jennifer. Lonnie, I'm just curious, what's a common leadership advice that you actively reject?
I have to be honest. I don't know that I've been the recipient of that much advice. Certainly not in this position. I think that's a tough one for me to answer. If I may quickly weigh in on the prior question, if that's okay, I just wanted to share. I'm the polar opposite of Tony. I started my career as a lawyer having to wear suits, and as soon as I saw a senior lawyer wearing a tasteful cardigan in court, I was like, okay, throw out those structured suits. That's not comfortable. I love the Zoom era because I can be tights from the waist down, black long johns if I haven't done my laundry, right? So, yeah, but one thing on that topic that I do think is important is, for me, I'll push the envelope where I can, but always when you're meeting people for the first time, or going to an all candidates, I think you do have to understand the landscape that you live in, right? So you have to understand that if people have that expectation, I wore a dark navy, tailored suit because you're trying to get elected, right? Or when you're first, gaining the trust of people and having them, wanting to see your capabilities, for sure in those situations, you do want to kind of play the game a little bit. But one other thing that I think is important, and this maybe more comes from my career as a lawyer, but I think it's also understanding the respect that others have for institutions. So I will push the envelope wherever I can in terms of wearing, more flamboyant clothing. But I used to always, as a lawyer, if I knew that I had, say, seniors coming into my office, I would always kind of dress it up on that day because I knew that for them, this was a formal occasion, to see a lawyer, to make a will, or do this formal business. And I wanted to respect kind of, their view of that institution. And so I think that's something to keep in mind, that we have to balance, being ourselves and thwarting norms and, being colorful and comfortable, with also taking into account that, as elected officials in these formal meetings, we're really, we have to be mindful of the respect to the institution and how other people view that. So yeah, sorry to answer a different question, but I don't think I've received a lot of leadership advice. I'd like to get some leadership advice. I'm looking to do that for my professional development, some leadership training.
No, thank you so much for that. And yeah, I appreciate what everyone's saying here. And I'm hearing a lot of kind of thoughtful takes on balancing that, while also strongly standing up against, sometimes some sexist and or racist expectations on us, right? And I really appreciate the different points that everyone's bringing today. So, and actually, I want to quickly move on to one of my favorite topics, which is about reflecting on power and influence. And this question is for all of you and our panelists today. When you first contemplated running for office or were first elected, how did you feel about the power and responsibility that you hold? And what kind of questions do you ask yourself about wielding power? I'll go to you first, Jennifer. Oh, sorry, Jennifer. Can you hear me okay? Oh, yes. If you don't mind going. Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, I can definitely start off. How do I feel about holding power? Well, sometimes I feel like I don't hold enough of it. I am one city trustee, and Vancouver has political parties municipally, and we have 9 seats. So it's very difficult to feel powerful when it's almost impossible to get a majority vote in advance or without a lot of work and a lot of amendments if your motion even goes forward. So I find it extremely difficult to find political power at the board table. But as a lot of my mentors, and I will say that the most important, like the election process is one part, but staying elected, especially as a racialized woman, I find is very difficult. How many times I just feel like quitting. And what I mean by that is that there are so many unexpected challenges that regardless of sort of like how formulated the idea is, that you're like, when I have this seat, I want to make sure I'm advocating for food programs in schools. I want to make sure that I keep public land public. I want to make sure that we fulfill Indigenous rights. As clear as those goals are, there's so much pressure to kind of derail your own set of values. And what I mean by that is it happens at the decision-making table. It happens behind the scenes. You post something on Twitter and someone's calling you and asking you, why, or why did you like this? Or those kinds of things make you question the sense of power that you might think you have and maybe don't. But I think what's really important is having a team to help you stay on track with your values so that when you are jarred, which you will be, and I think Tony spoke about that, like the kind of like you can't please everyone. And so how do you recalibrate and go back to your value set? So for me, it's about public accountability and public participation in all that I'm doing. It really speaks to how any of the ideas I even have come from my working with community members, youth, newcomers. And without that, I really wouldn't have any ideas to share at the board table. So I really use that as a way to also check my own self and my own power. So the accountability lies with the public. And that's, I think the best way to maintain some kind of self-regulation in that as well, because it can feel like the decisions at the table are the only decision. And like that moment is everything, and it isn't, but it can easily deflate you. And that's why I would just say, even on the election trail, so if you're thinking about running, to be mindful of that and be ready for it with a team that can remind you what your values are, and that one interaction is not a symbol of your entire set of values or your ability to move forward. So I hope that's like, go get them.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Jennifer. And how about you, Lonnie?
Thanks. So, I think just connecting with the broader community, like that's sort of the same theme for me. So I mentioned earlier that I had kind of 10 general areas, and I kind of have different groups that I'll connect with. There's a group of, people involved in various environmental issues with different nonprofits that I try to get together with, different directors on those boards, a couple times a year and just share with them the issues in the community and get their perspective. And then, you know, on social issues, we've got 3 nonprofits that kind of do a lot of the frontline work in the community. So I make sure to, you know, go to meetings that they attend to hear what the issues are, and to, you know, sometimes seek out meetings with the executive directors all together. Like, I like to bring groups together if I can on particular issues to kind of, you know, talk about the state of things and you know, policy strategy and that sort of thing. So yeah, I do think that it's very important, you know, to be connecting with the community, and to also, when you're speaking to an issue where you don't have that direct experience. So for example, you know, like an Indigenous issue, to reach out, like, you know, I have trusted friends who are Indigenous, and I might say to them, you know, I need to say something on this topic. These are my thoughts. Can you, you know, can you vet this for me, or what input do you have? Or I think if you can ever directly give a voice to an underrepresented group, that's a really great opportunity. You know, one example, on Orange Shirt Day, I was planning to spend a few minutes speaking about that during our meeting. And so I invited a Haisla friend of mine to just, you know, say, you know, write something that you would like me to read, and I'm going to read that for you. So yeah, I think if you can give a direct voice, that's really great, if there's a way to make space for another voice. And if you can't, just to really do your homework. I think there was another part of your question, the kinds of questions you ask yourself. So yeah, I mean, I think it's really like, for me, you know, I'm apart from being a female, I'm otherwise very privileged, and so I think it's just always reminding myself that you know, that I do need to constantly make those connections with people that are less privileged, or with the service providers that are really right there on the front lines all the time.
Thank you, Lonnie. And you kind of already answered my next question, but I'll go to Gurveen first as well with the same question about how did you feel about the power and responsibility that you hold, and what kind of questions do you ask yourself about wielding power?
I mean, I think I would say, like, when I was elected at first, the power and responsibility, I think it really feels a little bit unknown and confusing. You're expected to navigate this space that was never made for you. Meanwhile, creating change to make it so it is for you. And I think this is like a process that goes on, and power and responsibility is really, it's what you make it. And throughout the years, it's learning that, you know, power is a people, and just really making sure that you're connecting with the public and the folks whose voices you never quite hear. And, you know, questions that I always think to myself is, who is this serving, and like, who am I working for? And, you know, shortly after I was elected, the Godwara here in Queensborough threw an event for me, because they finally had representation and they were so excited. And just the pressures from that, as well as recognizing that you're also representing folks that haven't had power. And the responsibility with that is heavy as well, in that you don't want to let them down, and you also want to include them, because this is something that they felt so far from. And just making sure that you're creating accessible spaces, so you're not the only one that's doing this. And I think a really important thing is recognizing that, you know, we're only guaranteed 4 years. Who knows what's going to happen next year? So it's, am I doing everything that I can while I can? And that's a big responsibility. There's a lot of change to do. And at the same time, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So being strategic with the way that you are leaning into your power and responsibility.
Thank you, Gurveen. I just wrote in big letters what you said. Who is this serving? That is such an important question. Who is this serving? Thank you. How about you, Tony? Sorry, Tony, you might still be. Oh, there you go.
There. Oh, my little indicator lights are not working, so I might have to unmute a different way. So this is the question about power. Well, again, as I said, that when I first started in local government, you know, made the decision that I would run, I didn't have any idea of really what power, the council, as a councillor, as an individual, not so much, but as a council as a whole, yeah, you do have some power. And as Jennifer was saying, being one of 9, and especially in a party system, it I don't envy you, Jennifer, for being in that position. It must be that much harder to get anything on the table, as you suggested, and then also to get anything passed, to get that majority vote with you. So, um, as people may or may not know, uh, well, I have been accused. I'll just tell you some of the things that I have been accused of, simply because I had gotten to a point where enough was enough, and I well, I have abused my power as a mayor. I have done a disservice to politicians everywhere. I have negatively impacted the opportunities for other women in local government. I am a racist Karen. A number of things that I won't mention, including a number of actions that would be taken against me. And this was, all of this is related to, really, as I said, enough was enough. And it was a very public, well documented incident. And it was an overt anti-racist act to counteract an overt racist act perpetrated against a family in our community, and perpetrated by the residents of Summerland. And this part of the story, people are unaware of, because there was so much shock over what happened to this family that people forgot that there was also racist graffiti all over a public structure the same night. The same night. I don't think it was done by the same people, but that's regardless. So when you had asked earlier, do you really think that things that you do are winnable? I have to admit, I didn't give any thought whatsoever on the winnability of what I was going to do. But even if I had given any thought to it, I would have done it anyways. As a person of color growing up in this community, it has not been easy. And so I got a fair bit of support from both white people and those in other communities, BIPOC community, but also other communities that are marginalized, like the 2S LGBTQ+ community, people of lower socioeconomic, vulnerable communities. But so as far as power, I would never think, well, I was charges were brought against me, and that didn't work. And so the store owner wanted council to sanction me and wrote a letter and put it all over media. And incidentally, I'm no longer on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. It's just way too toxic. And I mean, it has its good points, but not for me in this position, even 6 months later. And I would say I I definitely did not realize how powerful the statement was, whether or not it came from a position of power, how powerful the statement was, but also how powerful the backlash was going to be. Like I said, there was lots of support, but I didn't really have any understanding of how powerful, well, either side, the supportive side or the non-supportive side was going to be. So I'm not sure if that really answers the question, but you know, power is an interesting word, and I think that it has, just like the word politician, it has a negative, it has negative connotations. Not necessarily, you know, truth to that, but I think that the word power has negative connotations. Positive ones too, but negative too.
Thank you so much, Tony, for sharing your story with us, and for being open to us bearing witness to your story as well. I personally, I must say that what you did really, really touched me personally, and I actually wanted to go to Summerland just to see you, just to say thank you for what you did. I did not get.
I wish you had. I wish we had met when you were
I did
here.
not find my way around, and I just want you to know that in the chat box right now, the chat box is blowing up with so much love for you. People want to create a fan club for you. So, yeah, I just want you to know that what you did was incredibly powerful and really touched a lot of us in so many ways. So thank you, Tony. And one of these days, one day soon, we'll get to meet in person. Thank you. And I think this is actually a powerful moment to shift to the next topic, which is movement building. And I want to ask, let's go with Lonnie with this question. Lonnie, I know you touched this a little bit in the previous question, but how do you show solidarity for other people and other communities?
Thanks for the question. Yeah, you know, I think really it's just about what I mentioned earlier about making sure that you do cultivate those relationships with people that are, you know, directly impacted by that issue, and that, yeah, that you put the time in. And I have to say, you know, when Jennifer was talking earlier about you know, all of the work that goes into, you know, getting a controversial motion seconded, or, and, you know, I should say not even controversial, just sometimes, you know, if you have, if you've made a reputation for yourself as kind of being the voice of difference and going against the grain, I find that, and maybe this is just a woman because the rest of my council, they're all men over age 50. So we have a very not diverse council. I've put forward motions that are actually really benign and they don't go anywhere. And I've had people comment to me that sometimes then a man will take, you know, the exact same intent that I had and switch up the words and it'll get support. But you know, coming back to Jennifer's comment, I think one thing that I really didn't realize coming into this is the amount of work that you have to do behind the scenes. So in addition to like all of the regular meetings, all of the committee meetings, all of your background reading, all of your emails, if you have a motion that you want to pass, you know, you really have to put that time into the one-on-one conversations with the other people on council to also reaching out to those people and to the broader community, to, if you know that they oppose things, to understand them better and see if you can modify your proposal so that it doesn't die because of too many amendments. And there, it's just really like a lot of grunt work that you can't possibly imagine. And what I always say to people, you know, when they ask about how much work, I say, you know, really on average, it's like 25 hours a week, but I could easily spend 40 or 60. Like if I wanted to take those top 10 areas I have and really see progress on all of them in my term, and if I was to do the background work with my colleagues and in the community, you know, there's no end to the hours that you could put in to do that. So yeah, I don't know if I really answered the question. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lonnie. And you actually just helped me segue into the next question, which is actually for Tony, because I heard what you said, Lonnie, was there's a lot of collaboration and working together with others, right? That goes into your work in politics. So Tony, I'm curious, can you tell us about a time when you collaborated with others who don't exactly share the same views as you? And what kind of lessons did you learn from that experience?
I think in my bio I say that I'm a serial collaborator. That's what I've been called. I love people, and I love to bring groups together. I think I'm not sure if I can give you, you know, a very good example. Well, here's maybe an example, and you can decide for yourself if it kind of answers the question or not. So out of the racist incidents, I firmly believe that there are silver linings in everything, just like there are silver linings in this pandemic that we're going through. I firmly believe that. And, you know, I'm not going to talk about them tonight. But one of the silver linings that came out of this, these incidents, because there were 4 in a row, all within 3 weeks. That was just in Summerland, and there was others, you know, in the valley. Was the council asked if we could, we passed a resolution to have staff work with local nonprofits on developing some conversations about racism. And these conversations were going to be held publicly. There was no obligation to attend, obviously. And it was just to provide information on what systemic racism is and systematic racism, and how it's manifested and how it's perpetrated, and what it is that that white people can do to move towards action, you know, action as being an anti-racist. And there are a whole bunch of things that people can do. It really needs to begin with what is racism, and you know, when we think of racist, we're not talking about people that burn crosses and, you know, lynch black people and that kind of stuff. And it's not directed at any one particular group. It's racism generally. And in Canada, as you know, there is, well, we don't even have to talk about the treatment of our Indigenous, I shouldn't say our Indigenous, the original owners of this land, and still the owners of most of this land. And so that is something that has come out of that. And in terms of the collaboration, our then CAO invited me to the very first, it was a very preliminary meeting. And there were, and I won't even go into the number of groups, but there was quite a varied number of people that attended. And there were a couple of people that attended that I mean, it wasn't like it was a, well, no, I guess it was. It was an invitation only kind of thing. Just to get an understanding of who in the community, representing whichever group, wanted to establish a terms of reference and a committee and work on what it is that needed to be presented and who was going to do that, and a moderator, and maybe even Sheila would like to moderate, and all of those kinds of all of that kind of stuff. But we needed to have a meeting in the not in the community, this initial meeting, just to make sure that there were, I guess, just to find out if there were people that were so intent on making sure that this happened. Obviously, that's something that I wanted and that council wanted. The first meeting, when the first meeting was over, I went into our CAO's office and he said, "So how are you feeling?" And I said, "I am a little shocked by some of the comments that people were making on this. Like, you can't use that language. You can't use the word racism. There is no racism in Summerland. How dare you call racism Summerland? If you want to talk about it, you're going to make the racism worse. You're going to make more racism happen." And it was just, I was dumbfounded that this place that I thought was going to be filled with like-minded people that wanted, seriously and genuinely wanted to get something working on this, were there for that reason. But it turned out that was that was not the case for some of the people. Other people, it was great. And fast forward to, it's taken a long time, way longer than I wanted it to take, because my fear is, oh yeah, that's all over with, on to the next event where everybody is shocked again, right? And because it's not the first time it's happened. And so I was very pleased to hear towards the end of last year that some funding that we had requested from the provincial government to help us with this had been granted and funneled through. It's called it's an immigration society that helps immigrants as they come to the South Okanagan. So helps them with everything you can possibly imagine. And so they have taken the lead on this. And yes, it is going to happen. It'll be interesting to see how it happens. But I am, aside from the people that were not like-minded, who I was surprised that they were even part of what I thought was a good collaboration. It'll be interesting to see how this goes forward. And I think that it'll be a much more productive and to me, like a safer meeting this next time. I mean, it's good to hear. It's good to hear that, because it hurts, but it's good to hear it, because then it makes it more concrete that there is, in fact, a problem, and it's not just me as a person of color seeing that there's a problem. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Tony. And I think what I'm hearing from you is that collaboration is very important in political work, and at the same time, it is very complex. and requires a lot of patience, a lot of strategy, if I'm hearing that right, and so much more. So thank you so much for saying that. And we are almost at the end of our time together, but I have one bonus question for both Gervine and Jennifer right now, and it's about the culture of politics. So Gervine and Jennifer, what are the cultures of politics that you would like to change, and what do you want to see more? And I'll go to you first, Gervine.
I think from like a school board level, I mean, there's a lot of things to change in politics, right? But really it's removing ego from the work that we do. I think often politics can really feel, politics is not synonymous with being partisan. And I think recognizing that the work that we're trying to do for our communities is so important, and understanding that also top-down approaches don't work. And I know as chair, that's not how I lead, that collaboration is really important. And working together for delivering the best equitable outcomes for families, and understanding how to do that, because I think we're in the zone where we feel like politics is so us versus them, and it doesn't need to be like that. And it takes work to do that. I'm really fortunate that I do work with people that recognize that, but I know that's not the case everywhere. I know my fellow trustee Jennifer doesn't have that experience. And I think those are really important ways to make decisions, and understanding who are you working for? So.
Thank you, Gervine. I was just going to put my hand clapping emoticon there just to say how much excited I am for everything that you're saying.
Yeah.
How about you, Jennifer?
Yeah, I can add to that too. I think that's a great like aspiration, and something that can happen like in any decision-making process. I feel like municipal politics has so much power, and actually, we say it at the election time, like why should you vote in a municipal election? And the voter turnout is so low, even though you know that it affects the daily lives of people in your city or in your town. And I couldn't stress that more to help people get more involved. But what needs to change are the rules of the game. The kinds of time and money it takes to run in elections is prohibitive. The amount of money you get as a trustee really requires you to either have a lot of intergenerational wealth. So, being a trustee is part-time in the evening. So I do have a day job, and a lot of folks don't actually realize that's like, you can't like pay your bills with a trustee's salary. And that's like a real systemic flaw in my opinion. And the reason why I say that is because it prohibits young people and people who can't live off of $30,000 a year from running and having a seat. So that needs to change. Robert's rules and agenda setting, the best way to exclude by design is those rules. And it can work against you in so many insidious ways. And being racialized doesn't mean that you are anti-racist. And I think that I couldn't stress more enough as well. And specifically around just watching voting records, as well as like how ideologies play out. So the cool thing is that anybody can be anti-racist. Anyone can stand up for human rights. You don't have to have your rights breached before you recognize the rights of another person or the rights of a particular group that has been intergenerationally excluded. And my indicator is young people who aren't safe sitting at the board table, who are afraid to sit down to speak at a committee meeting of their school board, which they pay for to run the board for them. So if that's not happening, and eventually they do, or they'll send someone on their behalf, but that's not good enough. And that absolutely needs to change. Do I have the answers right now? No, but we need to elect way more One City, One trustees in Vancouver. And Gervine, will be moving in with me quite soon so that she can run in the next Vancouver election. So that'll be great. Hope you're okay with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, trustees unite. But yeah, so I think those are just a couple of the pieces. And one last kind of thing I guess I would say about like the culture of politics is like two things that really bother me that I think like I want to try to change in myself as well is like paraphrasing what other people say at the board table or any decision-making table. Like, oh, I think you meant this, when like your answer was perfectly clear. And the second thing, so paraphrasing questions. And the second thing, I forget what it is, but don't do that. Don't paraphrase other people's ideas. And that's a way that you could be an ally when you're elected, as well as when you're on the campaign trail and letting people like speak for themselves and being heard as is. Oh, and when you do ask for an opinion, don't just thank people or meet them with silence. Like when people come to our tables to inform decision making, it's our responsibility to thank them, tell them what we think. I couldn't be more embarrassed about the silence that follows people that come from the public to say what's mattering to them, what their reality is, and not feeling heard. It's one of the only levels of government that allows for public input at that level, and it's our responsibility to it. I also can't wait to work on all of your campaigns.
Sheila, I also wanted to add something else as Jennifer was talking. She's talking a lot about the toxic things that we need to change at the board table itself, and how we need to create spaces so when there are new leaders in those roles that we've done the work so that other people don't, I guess, have to suffer through it, right, Jennifer? But the number one thing is actually getting people there. And Jennifer mentioned money being, a big barrier, which it definitely is. But one of the biggest barriers is, how do you even get started? And I think the Feminist Campaign School is a great resource. But if you don't have those connections and you don't have people of influence in the community, you're just somebody that cares about the community, but you have no idea how to get started, it's really daunting and it's really impossible to get on there. And I think we really miss out on a lot of great potential for our communities. And I think that's a responsibility of all of us, especially as elected officials, to be going out and finding these people. And I think, yeah, that's what we need to start doing. 2022 is coming up. So, okay, that was it, Sheila.
I love it. Gervina, Jennifer, I was like, where is this hand clapping emoticon when I need it? Truly. And I love, Lonnie, thank you for reminding me that I can also do seriously, mic drop to everything that all of you are saying. Thank you so much for sharing all of your thoughts. And unfortunately, we're actually at the end of our time together here. But Gervine, you actually raised a very important point, and I'm going to kind of talk about that. We want to finish with a call to action. I want to ask each one of you on the panel to share with the audience about something that you might need support with. It could be any concrete thing, like, let's co-write an op-ed together to a local paper, or help me with a certain policy development, or follow me on Twitter and support me on Facebook. Let's connect, anything. And also if you could say how people in our audience could contact and connect with you directly. Let's start with Tony. Do you have anything in mind?
I don't have anything in mind. I'll have to I have to admit it's unusual to get that question. How is it that I can help you? How can I support you? You've found me at a loss. It's if I could turn the question around a little bit. No, I think I have an answer to that. I would say that the work that Nadine and Trudy and yourself, Sheila, have done in giving me, and I would, if I may speak on behalf of the other women who are here, by giving us the opportunity to speak to others, and as I can't remember who it was, that if it was Gervine or Jennifer that said, it's next year, we need to get moving on this. I think that is one way that you have supported me already. And I would extend that to the number of people. Like, there's over 100 people here listening to us, and who knows how many will view it on YouTube afterwards. And so I think that is, for me, that is profound support. So that's really helpful. And I'm so glad that you have chosen to stream this on YouTube and that it's available on YouTube, because I know personally of several females who have expressed interest. Some of them are young moms, and it's very difficult 7 o'clock on a school night, right? So that's really great. And as far as people connecting with me, I welcome anyone, any women. It doesn't matter who you are, where you live in British Columbia, anything. What your views are politically, or what I can't speak about what it's like to run or to be on a school board, but we have two very capable women here that are living that experience. But I am happy to share anything, any questions. There really is nothing off of the table. Obviously, I have made it quite clear where I stand on racialized communities. And Nadine, I know Nadine fairly well. She knows where I stand on our changing climate. So I'm open, and I'm not sure how you want us to share contact information, if that's something that you want to put on your website, or how you want to do that. But just let me know, Sheila.
That sounds really good, Tony. And yeah, I think I'll talk a little bit about later about how folks could connect more with the Feminist Campaign School, and that could be another way that they could connect with you. And that's a very, very generous offer of you, Tony. Thank you so much. And how about you, Gurveen? Any ideas?
Any ideas? Well, I mean, I think really, how can I support everybody on this call as well? I think I want everybody to feel free to reach out to me. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Gurveens, as well as on Facebook, Gurveen Dollywall School Trustee, and just really feel free to reach out to me. I'm really open and, welcoming to supporting anybody that's willing to run. But for me, I think I'm okay right now.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Gurveen. And for folks who didn't hear that, I think Trudy just wrote down Gurveen's Twitter handle there. How about you, Lanny?
Thanks. So a couple of things come to mind. Firstly, get out, go to your council meetings, get engaged, and support your progressive councillors. For me, I'm one of 7, as I mentioned earlier, and often I feel so frustrated because I know that on a particular issue, I think like 7 is something like around 15% of that council. And I know that my view on a matter is far greater than 15% of the community, would share my view on that. Something, a topic that's annoyed me lately, should we have more drive-throughs in our downtown when that's all we have there right now? And that there's lots of issues where if the table reflected the diversity in the community, that you just know the conversation would be different. And because I'm always that voice of difference, and I'm sure others experience this if they're also not on diverse councils, when you're always that voice of difference, people, they kind of have overload. And in my own community, and I expect this is in the same in other communities across the province, counselors that are kind of sticking their necks out all the time, that the rest of council needs to hear from the community and needs to know that, it's not, oh, there she goes again, kind of eye rolling. It needs to be the voices of the community standing up, because you're only as strong as the amount of supporters you have and the amount of people behind you. And often you can know that they're there and you can reach out to them, before and after meetings. But if they're not also taking the time to engage with other councillors and to come to meetings, then you're not as effective. And then the second thing I would say is just public service. It's a duty and an obligation. Not everybody has the ability to run for office, but if you feel that call, you step up, and if that's not something that you personally can do, then you help to get people elected. I'm so excited about this campaign school. I'm likely not running for another term in local government for various reasons, but my commitment to myself over the next 2 years is to dedicate myself to helping to find other candidates and to support them, and just to realize how much power there is. And I just find we have so much apathy generally. Like, people can hit like so much, on a post, but you got to get out from behind that computer and you need to engage. We're not going to see the change we need around social justice and, the ecosystem crisis and climate change. We're not going to see those changes in time if we don't all really dig deep, and you do have to have that seat at that table. And what I will say too in closing is, as hard as it is, like, especially coming from, the private sector, like, as hard as it is and as daunting as it is, and you think change takes forever and everything is so slow, 2 years in, I do see big changes. I see that as much as I just want to crawl under a rock and die at the end of some meetings, that looking back, changes are happening. And I got some advice from a great mentor very early on, who said, you're nudging the ship in the right direction. Like, you're not going to turn that ship around immediately, but you have to keep nudging it in that direction. And the more of us, pushing in the right direction, the faster the ship is going to turn around. So you got to do it. Get out there. You can do it. And we're all here to support you. I dropped my email address in the chat. It's lgibson, LGIBSON @kitimat, KITIMAT.ca. I do have a presence on Facebook. I don't take messages on my city councilor page, but you're welcome to message me on my personal account, and you'll see a pink dahlia. So it's Lanny Gibson with a large pink flower. So please, I really want to help people and mentor people and support others in getting elected. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Lonnie. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And how about you, Jennifer?
Yeah, thanks. I wasn't sure if I'd get a chance or not, so I'm glad to share. So I know folks are having to go, and that's cool. So I guess the thing is that all the stuff we're talking about, it's actually really fun. And so if that's one thing I could say is going to the meetings, bringing someone with you who's never gone to a meeting before, showing somebody how to come and present at a meeting, how to access that opportunity. It's awesome. Like, watching people for the first time take the microphone and say what their experience is amazing. And that's definitely the reason to come back at it every day. And one other thing I would say is aside from the elected seat itself, in terms of the kind of support required, is providing support to folks that are in elected positions by, writing motions, doing research, calling things out when they happen, because having to do all of that plus the research plus the presentational work is a lot. So if you can be a part of that team, definitely offering your support that way. I have an amazing team. There's no way I would be even able to have the energy to give and reflect tonight without them. And I think that's really important. So if you can be a part of that team as you're deciding to run or not, and what a gift it is to decide to run and offer that leadership to your community. So even just sharing that out is huge. And we need more people with values, with principles that are unwavering on those values and principles to run, to win those seats. And we'll be there to keep you there for sure. And the last thing I'll just say is when you are asking electeds to bring forward important items that if I said I support Indigenous rights and I'm supporting Indigenous rights, is to not take your foot off the gas of those items. So to hold that accountability, to ask where it's at, when's the update, how will I know about it? That's what the kind of accountability that I think is sometimes assumed in between elections. So I invite you to hold me accountable, and also yourself in running for what it is you believe in. So thanks.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Another mic drop from all of you folks. And I just want to say, it's so interesting. I asked if anybody at home could help you with anything. And you folks are so generous and kind. Instead, you're saying that I am here to help you run, which is amazing. Thank you so much for your calls to action. And for folks who are watching at home who are still with us, please do consider reaching out to these amazing, amazing panelists. Some of them have provided their contact info and their social media handle. Please do consider reaching out. And I'm really hearing that the theme is not only authenticity, collaboration, commitment to equity and justice, lifting each other up, understanding your power, but also relationship. That is such a strong theme tonight. And thank you so much for that, everyone. It's been such an honor to listen to your stories and to bear witness to all of your stories. I think there's a lot of love happening in the chat box as well. So please take some time to read them as well. There's fan clubs forming for you folks. So just know that. And for folks tonight who are still with us, thank you again for still tuning in. I know we're a little bit over time. And I know that there are some questions in the Q&A. I'm so sorry that I haven't been able to get to it, but I was told by Trudy that they will address those questions on the website at feministcampaignschool.ca. And just another reminder for folks at home that there's still 2 days left to register to be part of the first ever cohort of the Feminist Campaign School. So if you can't make it this time around for this first cohort, there will also be future cohorts coming up in the near future. If I'm not mistaken, it's going to be in April. So please stay connected with the Feminist Campaign School by signing up on their mailing list on their website, www.feministcampaignschool.ca. Again, it's www.feministcampaignschool.ca. And most importantly, if you know someone in your community with great values who you really think should run, please encourage them, tell them that they should run, lend them your support, and let them know about the Feminist Campaign School. Thank you so much again, everyone on the panel and everyone at home for being here, for staying so late with us. I really appreciate all of this, and I hope you have a great rest tonight. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. It's nice meeting
I
all
miss
of you.
you all. You too. Tony, I loved your card. You're so amazing.
Oh,
it was beautiful.
Oh, well, thank you so much for your support.
100%. You can count on us.
Okay, well, thank you.
It's amazing. Yeah.